Welcome to From the Shed End podcast with myself, T Dot. As always, thank you very much for joining me. Now, before we get into the content, and for those that are going to be joining us live, hopefully on this channel, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let us know your thoughts as well. Give us a thumbs up and let us know your thoughts as well in the description about what we're going to be talking about. This comment section below. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and make sure you go and download all our podcast episodes. You can go back and listen to all of the episodes from previous seasons, and also some interesting fun ones as well. The last one we did was five aside for £20, so it sounds really good. It was really good to record with Theo. We got to do our five-a-side teams based on a maximum total of £20. We both picked our five-a-side teams, so make sure you go and listen out to episode 69 of From the Shed End podcast. It's now available on Spotify. Now, I want to quickly talk about Crystal Palace, who we had at the weekend. Really good game, some positives to take from the game, but there was also some negatives as well. And I think that the same negatives that we got to see under Thomas Tuchel, the same negatives that we got to see against Dinamo Zagreb, against RB Salzburg as well, they were still there against Crystal Palace. And I don't think we can shy away from the fact that, you know, we still aren't clicking. There was some. Let's start with the positives. I mean, you know, I thought Patrick Aubameyang had a really good game. I thought Raheem Sterling had a brilliant game as well. I thought defensively we were okay. At times we were a bit shaky, but you know, we dominated the game. First part of, you know, 20 minutes of the game was very much the same. It was just very inconsistent in terms of what we were trying to do in the game. I don't really want to spend too long on Crystal Palace, but I thought there was moments when, you know, we should have taken our chances. We potentially don't look for the right ball. You know, I know Sterling had a couple of opportunities in the second half, especially to pass the ball to Aubameyang, pass it to Kai Havertz or someone, and doesn't really look up all the time. And I think that's something that Sterling just needs to work on, I think, as well. But for their goal, Edouard, it was a goal out of nowhere. It was a brilliant ball in. A goal that we potentially could have avoided. I thought we could have done better defensively, and I think Kepa as well. Not to give Kepa too much heat, but I thought he could have done better in terms of the goal. But nonetheless, it was a good game, good performance. I thought we pushed on. And that's one of the things that we hadn't seen from Chelsea in a long time, is when we go 1-0 down, you know, what do we do? What's next? What do we do? How do we come back? How do we bounce back? And I thought the way that we came out the second half, and or even in the first half, sorry, before the half-time interval, you know, Patrick Aubameyang took his goal really well. And it's something that we know that he can do. You know, he's got that quality in him to be able to just turn his shoulder and hit the ball first time. You know, beating Guaita, which I thought was a brilliant goal, and he took it really well, and hopefully we can see more of that. You know, like I said just before, you know, I felt that Raheem Sterling was making the right runs. Aubameyang was making the right runs, and the ball just wasn't really coming to him. The service wasn't coming to him. There was a lot of times as well, and I know he was criticised a lot for this when he was at Arsenal, that he wouldn't track back, he wouldn't help out the midfield. He wasn't in that midfield helping out, and there were spells and moments of that against Crystal Palace where you could see that he was drifting back into midfield, holding up the ball really well, consistently well as well, and he was just an impossible person at times to mark for Crystal Palace. And you know, I think that's how the goal came about as well. And like I said, you know, we dug deep, we didn't stop. You know, the resilience was there from the players, and I think some of the subs that Graham Potter made definitely worked. Obviously, Conor Gallagher being one of the key ones, but yeah, you know, the goal that Conor Gallagher took was brilliant. You know, I thought that was one of the goals that we know that he's got those kind of goals in his locker, and he's a good performer. He's a good player. He doesn't stop, you know, at all. You know, he's a really good player, and I mean, he's got a massive shout now. Does he play, you know, against AC Milan? I would say yes. I think he does. I think he's a, you know, really good player, and I think he's proven. We talk about Mason Mount on this channel a lot, and I do think, you know, Mason does need a rest. You know, there was talk about Trent Alexander that Liverpool needing a rest. I think Mason Mount needs the same rest. You know, I think he's played a lot of football. It's been inconsistent. We have to be honest here. He's had some really good performances this season so far, but there's been more so than not a poor performance from Mason Mount, and I think it's only going to get worse if we don't allow him to have that rest and just sit him out of the team. And I think Conor Gallagher coming in, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who we know can come in as well. These sort of players are there. They're determined to try and perform. New manager, new ideas, new creativity. And I think this is a moment for maybe Mason Mount to. It's a massive call for Graham Potter if he doesn't play him against AC Milan. And I get that. And I think if we lose against AC Milan, which we'll get onto in a minute, it's a must-win game. But if he doesn't play him, then of course there's going to be question marks over why didn't we play Mason Mount. But I do think this is a massive game, and we can't carry passengers against AC Milan. They're a really good team. We know how good they are. We know how well they play, and I think we just need to be on our ball. But I thought we played really well. Going back to the Crystal Palace game, I thought we played really, really well. It was a well thought out victory. It's a performance that we needed. We only had 3 shots on target again, which is kind of the same stories that we've said before. We create a lot of chances. We had 13 shots, 64% possession of the ball, only 3 shots on target to show for it. And I do think, it was, I mean, we've got to talk about the handball. Let's talk about the handball, because it was handball. Thiago Silva was very, very lucky to stay on the pitch. If we're going to be 100% honest, I thought he was very lucky. He went down on a soft foul that wasn't really a foul. He handballs the ball, and then he decides to start playing volleyball on the floor. So he was very lucky to stay on. There's talk about whether Ben Chilwell potentially would have got over to that, but I think if you look back, I think it was Edouard who was the player involved with Silva. He's taken the ball away from his right leg, and that is a red card. It's a stopping a goal scoring opportunity. It's a red card in my opinion. So I thought he was very, very lucky to stay on the pitch. And I said previously, I think it was the Salzburg game. He looked 38, and I think looking at him against Crystal Palace, we got to see that. Can we afford to not play him against AC Milan, a must-win game? Personally, I would say no. I think we have to play one of our strongest teams. One of our strongest players is Thiago Silva. So for me, he has to start against AC Milan. He's a brilliant player. Obviously, there's concerns about playing Thiago Silva constantly, week in, week out. Massive games coming up as well, and I think there is going to be a point where we do need to rest him. And I think there is going to be opportunity for Potter to do that. But AC Milan is a big game. It's a massive game. We haven't started our Champions League campaign well at all. It's been poor. If we look back to some of the performances, Dinamo Zagreb and RB Salzburg, 2 poor performances, that we look at. We sit bottom of the table with 1 point. I mean, this is a must-win game. We have back-to-back performances against AC Milan. We have to at least win 1 out of those 2, if not both of them, to try and secure, the maximum 6 points that we can in that team. Salzburg again are another team that we have to play away as well in the return leg that we faced a couple of weeks ago at Stamford Bridge, and Dinamo Zagreb again, who can played really well in their home fixture against us. So I'm looking at these 2 AC Milan games, and they're the standout moments for me in terms of this group stage. If we really want to try and get out of it and not fall into that bracket of Europa League football, we have to win these 2 games back to back. We do. The San Siro is going to be a massive game, a really important game, a massive game. But before we go into that, we have the luxury of playing at home at Stamford Bridge before that. And I think this is going to be one of those games that we just have to hit the ground running. I'm going to bring up my lineup, which I've gone for. And the reason I've gone for this lineup is because I think it gives us a few options on the pitch as well, as opposed to bringing on subs. We know that Ruben Loftus-Cheek under Thomas Tuchel played as a right wing back, very hybrid at times. And I think, I would start with the 4 at the back. I think Koulibaly, with the experience of playing against the likes of AC Milan in Serie A, I think it'd be perfect for him to come into this game. Thiago Silva for me is the Rolls Royce. I've said that on many occasions. I think he has to start this game. I do think I know Mendy was back in training this morning alongside N'Golo Kante. I do think it's a massive ask from both players, Kante and Mendy, to come into this game. Massive game. Fitness won't be as the level that we need it to be. And I think Kepa, done really well against Crystal Palace. I don't think there was much that he did wrong, bar the goal, maybe. But, I think we need to stick with Kepa in goal for this one. Reece James, again, is a we don't really have the options. And this is why I think maybe bringing in a Ruben Loftus-Cheek, that we know that Potter likes to play five at the back at times as well. And depending on the game, we could potentially switch to, Ruben Loftus-Cheek switching in there, Gallagher coming into that pivot, which, yes, we know he's not the best at doing that. But I think if these are the options that we have, potentially we could maybe shift, back into that five with the two wing backs coming out slightly here, and utilizing Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I think it was a game against Tottenham where we played a similar formation as the 4-2-2 against Tottenham in the Carabao Cup, I think it was, and we done really well. It worked really well. Ruben Loftus-Cheek was effective as well in that game, and I thought, yeah. I mean, for me, he has to be in that midfield with Kovacic. I think we need to match the intensity of AC Milan, which I think they will come with. And I think when you have someone like Jorginho in that pivot, in that midfield too, it does slow down play sometimes. And I would have Kovacic alongside Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Sorry, I haven't done the defenders, but I've obviously gone for Ben Chilwell. I know Cucurella is another one that was back in training this morning, with the live training session that was on the fifth stand-up this morning. But I think we've got to go with Ben Chilwell, who I didn't think had the best of games against Crystal Palace. But again, you've got to think about, Ben Chilwell coming back from that injury from last season, having to get his match fitness back. It's going to take some time, which is what we've said on this channel many times before. So I think Ben Chilwell coming into that role, he's going to have to, he's got a big role, he's got a massive role. It's a massive game, like I said before, playing against the likes of AC Milan, Olivier Giroud coming back to Stamford Bridge as well. So I think, that back four is going to have to be very solid, to take on some of the quality that AC Milan are going to possess. But the midfield, as I said, Kovacic and Ruben Loftus-Cheek are my two that I would go for in the midfield. And again, you have the option of bringing in maybe Conor Gallagher, drifting him in a bit more closer to that midfield too, and then bringing Kai Havertz maybe into that front three, with Aubameyang being the central striker as the number 9. Or maybe even playing Gallagher here. I think this formation would give Graham Potter a few options to work with during the game. You don't want to go too attacking against AC Milan, because they are a very good team that love to high press and counter attack as well. And I think we do have to match them in that sense as well. But I just think if we're going to do that, then we do need to have the players on the pitch that's able to do that. So I've gone for Conor Gallagher and I've gone for Kai Havertz just in front of that 2 in midfield. I thought Gallagher played amazing on Saturday when he came on, and yes, he had poor performances at the start of the season. He got sent off. I think it was in the Leeds game. He got sent off, stupidly very early. And I think he's proven, again, even at Crystal Palace when he was on loan, he's proven that he can play in big games. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity to give him that opportunity. Graham Potter seems to want to give these players opportunities to, the clean slate as a new manager. And I think, coming in, he might be able to support, Kai Havertz in that forward midfield, attacking midfield role, alongside Kai Havertz, who, again, I didn't really see much of. I haven't seen much of him all season. So it's hard to judge him based on what we have seen. If I'm going to base it on what he's done so far as a Chelsea player, there's a lot of improvement needed. He's got a lot of improvement to work on at the club if he wants to sustain a position in the starting 11. But the front 2 that I've gone for, no other than Raheem Sterling and Patrick Aubameyang, who both have been really consistent in terms of trying to score goals and scoring goals, more so Sterling. But I think the runs, like I mentioned before, the runs and the space that Aubameyang's making, the fact that he was drifting into that midfield to hold up the ball and to bring the ball forward in that transition of play, I thought he done that really well against Crystal Palace. And I think if we can get the 2 of those 2, Sterling and Aubameyang, that partnership that seems to be forming, we can get that working a bit more. I think we've got a makeshift attacking option here in terms of Sterling and Aubameyang going forward. But that would be my formation. I would go with the 4-2-2-2. I'm not a massive fan of it, but it has worked for us in the past against, like I said, against Spurs on a number of occasions. I do think it's a good option, as I've just explained, around the plays that we can shift around and change the formation. And it does leave some quality, the likes of Mason Mount on the bench as well, the likes of Hakim Ziyech, Christian Pulisic, who I thought again played really well to set up Conor Gallagher for the winning goal on Saturday, but he does give us more options off the bench as well. And I think, again, in the back of our minds, we have to think about Wolves, who they've sacked their manager and Bruno Lage. They're gonna have that bounce back. We need to make sure we rest some of these players. We played on a Wednesday, so again, you got to think about factoring, swapping some of these players over. You probably expect to see, maybe if they're fit enough, N'Golo Kante on the bench, he might get some minutes on against AC Milan. But that would be my lineup. That's a lineup that I'd go with. And I think we need to hit the ground running with this one. I really do. I think it's going to be an important game. As I said, back-to-back defeats will ultimately spell Europa League, or worse, come out of the group altogether. So if we don't win these games, it could be a blessing in disguise. It might allow Graham Potter the season to focus on other things, getting the squad right. We're linked with a lot of players, one being Nkuku at the moment, and a lot of other players. So it might just give Graham Potter the opportunity just to focus on, take pressure off him, because there is going to be pressure on Graham Potter to do well in these sort of tournaments. As a Chelsea manager, and that's what the expectations are. But he has a lot to deliver. He's got a lot to work with in terms of quality, and I just can't see how, if we lose these two games, how we get out the group. I think we drop into Europa League, or we come out of the group altogether. So if I'm going to do a prediction, I would probably say, I'd like to say 2-1 Chelsea, but we have to forget, we haven't really mentioned AC Milan have got some quality players, and I don't just mean Tomori and Giroud. You can look throughout that squad, and they have some really quality players. They've done really well in their own league domestically as well. So, it's not going to be an easy game at all. I think there was a team that will definitely give us a problem. And I think this game here, that this game here is really the game that we need to be winning. As I said, I think, their form isn't the greatest in Serie A. They're fifth, but they're sitting on 17 points. That they've lost one in their last 5 games, and they've scored a hell of a lot of goals, 16 already this season. So I do think they're going to be, they're going to cause us problems, but we have to get it right. The lineup now has to be right as well. I for one would drop Mason Mount. I know that's goes against what a lot of Chelsea fans would want or would think, but we have to do what's right for the club and not what's right for a player. And for me, Conor Gallagher's proven that he can play that role a bit higher up. Thomas Tuchel played him as a midfield double pivot, and it didn't work. I know I've just done that on there as an example, but I think those are options. But I think playing him higher up, we've got to try and match AC Milan. So I'm going to go 2-1. I think it's going to be a difficult game. It'll be interesting to see how AC Milan line up as well, but I'm going to go 2-1. I'm not going to go for goal scores, but I do want to see some top performances from some of these players as well. As I said, we've got a massive game against Wolves coming at the weekend as well. So, we need to get this kind of momentum, consistency going within the team and building from there. So let's see how we get on. Hopefully we get 3 points, because if we don't, then it's going to be a long, long road to the Europa League, which we know we are very, we successfully won it before in Baku, but we don't want to be there. We want to be in the Champions League trying to win the big prizes. So hopefully we can get there. We can get these two games out of the way, try and get 6 points and build from there. But let me know your thoughts in the comments as always. Give me your score predictions. Give me your predicted lineups as well. What would you change about my lineup? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as always. This has been T Dot from the Shed End. Until next time, stay safe and thank you very much for watching.